Our last speaker for this section is Mary Martin Niepold. She grew up in Lexington, North Carolina, and after her work with African grandmothers was named a 2009 Purpose Prize Fellow awarded to people over 60 who use their experience and passion to take on society's biggest challenges. Please help me welcome Mary Martin Niepold.
Three-year-old Eugene is finishing his homework. His grandmother Beatrice is helping. The pair live together in this small house in Kibera, one of Nairobi's biggest slums, after Eugene's mum died from AIDS. Eugene is also HIV positive. In Kenya, there is no social security for the elderly. Traditionally, families would look after their parents, but the AIDS epidemic has meant thousands of elderly people being left to fend for themselves. Those with grandchildren have added responsibility.
My grandson was very sick, and at the time he needed to have the right food to survive, which I couldn't provide.
The Nyana project was set up 2 years ago and has transformed Beatrice's and other grandmothers' lives by teaching them basic business skills, like learning how to sell food they make at home. It has also brought women in a similar predicament together. Last year, the Kibera grandmothers helped set up this kindergarten. The children they look after can attend for free. The other kids have to pay.
Now things are going well, but before I joined the project, I didn't have food for the children. But now I'm getting the items and everything is good.
The preschool also means the grandmothers can work whilst the children are learning. And the kindergarten also provides 2 healthy meals a day for the kids.
The grandmothers are seeing light for their grandchildren, that in future they will have a better life just like any other child in a society.
Will you marry me? Oh yes, I will marry you tomorrow. But
Losing your parents at such a young age to AIDS can have a devastating effect, as can watching your children die. But as the kids rehearse their Christmas play, they'll at least be able to celebrate the holidays like other families around the world.
Yay! Thank you. I'm the grandmother on the lineup today, and that really, I'm sure, is what spawned all this. My journey really began with heartbreak and then outrage. When I look back on my first trip to Africa 5 years ago, I had gone as a volunteer in Kenyan orphanages. There is absolutely nothing that could have prepared me for seeing what I saw and coming home and deciding to do something about grandmothers devastated by the AIDS crisis in Africa. Michelangelo said, "The greater danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving our mark." Little did I know, I didn't even know I was setting an aim that first trip. Before departing, I'd read a couple of articles about the plight of these grandmothers all over Africa raising grandchildren orphaned by AIDS. I'm a grandmother myself, and I think it just tore inside of me. The truth is, millions and millions and millions of women all over Africa have buried their own sons and daughters to AIDS, and now they don't have education, a husband, no skills, and most of them live on less than $1 a day. They are raising a second generation of children, their orphan grandchildren. Today, I know how deeply those facts had stirred up my consciousness, because that first trip, I found myself asking everybody I met, who's helping the grandmothers? And they would say no one, not even the government. I was shocked, I was heartbroken. I'm a journalist. I did research, I came home, and all of a sudden I began to feel outrage. Years ago, I was a Vietnam protester, and a protester for civil rights before that. I came to Wake Forest. I used to sit right back in that section next to Brian Piccolo. So I had this career in journalism. I didn't believe what I had seen, and this hell no started coming up in me. So there it was, and the idea began to take form. Why couldn't these older women learn skills and begin earning income to assist their families? Sometimes these women care for 9, 10 AIDS orphans. They live huddled together in 10-foot square rooms in city slums or in shacks made of twigs and dirt floors in the countryside. No electricity, no running water, no assistance. Almost all of these grandmothers have never made it past second grade, and some of them, like a few we work with in Rwanda, are HIV positive themselves, having been raped by the genocidaires after seeing their husbands murdered during the genocide. Yet nothing deters these women. Nothing lessens their desire to make a difference for their grandchildren. Instead, and this is what they've done for me, they tap their faith, they do whatever they can to keep heart and body strong, and they offer love whatever the circumstances. So that simple idea helped them to help themselves took shape, and the Yanya Project was born. Yanya in Swahili means grandmother. It also means tomato. Sometimes I tell them they're the hot tomatoes. Anyway, I returned to Africa with a friend the following summer just to see if this was even an idea that could find roots, but something was guiding me, and other people have talked about this. I call it passion, a higher direction. Anyway, I was determined that these women would not be forgotten any longer. So, on that second visit, one coincidence after another, I could speak for 3 hours about what we call the Yanya magic. Unbelievable. It happens in elevators, airports, whatever. All I knew was that I simply had this idea of teaching skills to these women, and the worst I could do, this is all I knew, was to impose my view of what they should do. I kept telling myself, you do not know what is best for them, but they do. Just listen. So, in 3 weeks, in 2 countries, 4 cooperatives of grandmothers were formed. Some would herd sheep, some would learn business skills for their vegetable stands, some would weave traditional straw bags. All would do what came naturally to them, and we would simply sharpen their skills. We hire local managers and local organizations to teach them the skills. So, along the way, the former Prime Minister of Tanzania and the former Minister of Environment in Kenya became board members. This is the first summer return trip. Coincidence. I've now met with Raila Odinga, the Prime Minister of Kenya, on 2 occasions, as well as the Ministers of Families, Gender, and Social Services in Kenya and Rwanda. I was named a Purpose Prize Fellow in 2009, and this definitely helped others to hear how poverty and gender bias collide to degrade and dismiss these millions of women who have nowhere to turn. The poor girl children are always the first to be pulled out of the schools to help back on the farm, and so the cycles of poverty and illiteracy continue. Now, several governments know about these women, and bit by bit, we're chipping away at the wall of silence that is surrounded by what I call the untold story of the AIDS crisis. What you are doing, some African government officials have said to me, has never happened before. We knew about these women, but it took a stranger to come and wake us up. Great news for an old-time protester. Yes. So, really all I did, I'm going to cry, was just stay true to the idea that some real sustainable help could come to these women. and that the governments and the neighbors would no longer turn their backs on them. We've trained more than 220 such grandmothers in Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania. And in 2008, a bunch of us volunteers, along with 6 Wake Forest students, went to Dar es Salaam, Chris, where are you, to build a house for some elderly grandmothers. These old women had been totally shunned by their neighbors because their house had literally fallen to the ground around them. Alfonso Smith, who now plays for the Detroit Lions, he was part of the group, and so were his teammates Kevin Patterson and Chance McClintock. And they all came back, as we all do, with changed hearts. Because of that trip, both Kevin and Chance are now working for nonprofits. They graduated, they devoted themselves to nonprofit work. They say, yeah, somebody clap. They say it was Africa that made them choose these careers, and I know it was a group of old women in Africa who showed them what it really looks like to not have a voice. These African grandmothers get stuck in powerlessness, the very thing that the Yanya Project's mission tries to upend, and we do it. We never give handouts. We teach skills, and when the younger women and other grandmothers see what's happening to our TNP grandmothers, they want it too. So the grandmothers become role models. Perfect. We call them the Go Girls, along with Hot Tomatoes. And over the years, I love this part. I'll be talking with them in some village, meeting under a tree or somewhere in one of the city slums, and the men start coming around to the edges of our meetings, and they're really puzzled about what's going on. And then they'll eventually say, "Why don't you help us?" And I'll answer, "Maybe someday somebody will, but right now your women need to be heard." That usually quiets it down. We're not really trying to start a revolution, but it's those kinds of encounters, seeing the difference in these women's and children's lives, that keeps our work going. And the women are absolutely tickled pink that they can stand on their feet now. Their motivation to have their grandchildren have a different future than the one they had motivates them not only to come up with entrepreneurial ideas, which I'm getting ready to speak about, the preschool, but they also contribute to the savings accounts that we open for them. Now, here are women with virtually no money, but they will contribute 20% of their new earnings into these savings accounts. So, 3 years ago, they came to me with their idea. Why didn't I open a preschool in the Kibera slums of Nairobi? I began crying, and that's an immediate tip-off that I heard them. And this was their idea, and they would help the teacher and prepare hot meals. And then it would mean that other women could have a better place to leave their children, therefore work longer hours, and they could make more money too. So today, the Yanya Toto Preschool Center, which you saw in the video, is located in the largest slum in Africa. We've educated more than 130 small children who matriculate straight into the primary schools. We pay 8 grandmothers a month to work at the center. And the absolutely most beautiful thing I think I've ever seen is that the small 2 to 5-year-olds are teaching the grandmothers how to read. I've never seen anything like it. So my message today is that if you stay true to your dream and you stay open to the suggestions of the people you're working with, this is how you make a difference. And when I look at that preschool, I know anything is possible. So today we're in the midst of adapting this method, this preschool, for a preschool in Rwanda. And our biggest challenge is raising funds. But everything is in place. The government's approved what we're doing. We're official, we're legitimate. Small children are being educated, and the older women are now earning up to 4 times what they used to. So they have been the blessing to me. And when it gets dark and the funds get low, I know that the only thing required of me is to do what the grandmothers taught me. Stand in faith, make a ruckus if you have to, and let the world know that it is possible at any age to put fire to a vision. Albert Einstein said there are 2 ways to live your life. One is as if nothing is a miracle, and the other is if everything is a miracle, and I believe it. Thank you.
Asante. Asante, Mama.
Ah, yes, Bibi. Tanzania.
Oh,
they
Bibi
call
or
them
Mama?
Bibis. Well, Mama, but Bibi is grandmother in Tanzania.
Well, you look like a mama, so.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Take it.
If you can just share with the crowd really quickly, is there any specific story, any moment that was the most inspiring from East Africa? I would love if you could share it.
Sure. I noticed you did a really good storytelling job. So up in the hills near Mount Kenya is sheep herding country. And there's a woman up there named Mary Wanjiku, who is now 75 years old. I met her, and she had a son who lived in Kisumu, which is, if Mount Kenya is here, Kisumu is all the way west, probably an 11, 12-hour bus ride. So Mary got the word. Her daughter-in-law had died of AIDS 18 months earlier, and she got the word that her son had died, leaving her 2 grandsons totally orphaned over in Kisumu. And Mary began walking down to go get her grandsons. And some of the neighbors saw her, and they began collecting fees to give her bus money to go get her grandsons. So she told me the story. She got there late at night, and she found her grandsons in the area where they had lived, naked, midnight, standing around a fire. No one had taken them in. And I said, Mary, what did you do? She said, it's all okay. I picked them up, I put them on the bus with me, and everything's fine. Now they sleep on the mattress, and I sleep on the ground. There you go.